Hi, and welcome to the Writing Gals. We're four sweet romance authors staying up late, and tonight we're going to be talking about anthologies and collections that authors write and put out together. And so we have tons of questions for that. But before we get into that, we'll just kind of go over what has been going on for the Writing Gals. So we'll start with Judy. What's up with you this week?
Not a lot. I have been having a difficult time getting into writing again. So I outlined my book again today. I like to outline my books a lot, it seems, and I got half of that done. I did write the first chapter last week, and then part of the second chapter this week. I kind of do things out of order. But yeah, so that's what I've done, and I am hoping to finish my outline tomorrow, and then next week get to writing again. And I said that last week too. So
awesome. Hey, sometimes a break is needed, right?
Yeah, and sometimes you just can't get out of the break. That's my
right. problem. I think you pushed real hard and you deserve a break. Yeah. All right, Michelle, what's been going on with you?
My cats are fighting right now, so if you hear them. I am going nuts. I'm with Judy. I'm like at the very tail end of crashing and burning right now. No, I'm just joking. I'm not quite there as far as like my project, just as far as my brain. So writing 3 Christmas stories in 2.5 months with a vacation and a 2-week illness thrown in there has been really tough. And so, but I am going to be publishing my 3rd Christmas romance next week, probably hopefully on Monday, maybe Tuesday. Sugar Plums and Mistletoe will be going live, and it's super exciting. I just can't wait to see what it does. Then I'm going to take 2 weeks off and just enjoy the holiday and my family and reading. Especially the reading, not especially the reading. That sounds terrible. But I mean, like, I get my family all the time. I don't ever get to read anymore. Is that terrible?
I get that.
I've got my Kindle list all ready and just waiting. And every time I pick up my phone, I'm like, oh. So anyways, yeah. So that's all I've got going on. 2 launches going at the same time.
That's just all.
Yeah, just all. And trying to finish the 3rd one. You know, it's been super fun.
Awesome. Well, that's super exciting that you got all those books launching. That's awesome. Amy, what have you been doing?
Well, I have been
going crazy busy.
Is what I'm doing. No, I seriously, I'm so tired of launching books, but of course I do it to myself. Like, I wish I could turn off my brain like Judy and just be like, yeah, 2 weeks and I'm going to take a vacation. I can't. I think I need to go on a cruise like Victorine's going to like really stop. But I can't. It's this like terrible thing. Anyways, so I launched Second Chance Mistletoe Kisses, which did amazing. It's still doing amazing. Kind of wish it was a full-length book for all the page reads, but I'll keep it. I'll have it for what it is. And then I was like super excited that I learned all this new marketing stuff. So then I decided to bundle the first 3 of my married books and put them as a box set out. And so I'm launching that right now using all of my knowledge and stressing like a crazy person on trying to get, my goal is to hit the top 100 in the store with this box set. So we'll see if I actually can do it. And then I have another book launching, 2 books launching next week. One is mine, my Christmas Break Mistake. It's my YA, it's my Countdown to Christmas one. So that's going out. And then my publishing house is launching a book, Tia Soder's book, and it is awesome. It is about a basketball player romance. It's really, really good. So I'm excited. And then I'm plotting my next year. So I've started plotting a new series. I'm excited about that. And then I'm going to get back into writing. And that's how you want to write, is that you just market like crazy. And then all of a sudden you're like, I don't want to market anymore. I just want to write. So
that's right.
That's where I am right now, trying not to lose my mind.
I think once we have this figured out, we need to do something on burnout, how to avoid it, how to fix it, whatever.
Totally. Go on a cruise and go to the Bahamas. And
that's what I'm doing. I decided to go on a cruise. So, yeah, Charles and I are going on a cruise next week. So this week I have not been writing. I have just been getting Christmas ready because we get home like 2 days before Christmas and people are coming to my house. So I have to get all the presents bought and wrapped and under the tree and my house all ready for people to come over. So that's what I've been doing. And getting really excited about starting to plot new stuff for the next year. So awesome stuff going on with the Writing Gals. But let's jump into tonight's subject, which is anthologies and different collections. Now, there are several different ways I've seen this done with multi-author collections. Anthologies of like shorter novella stories, multi-author anthologies, where it's all just in one book. And Michelle and I are a part of one of those that launched a few weeks ago. And that one is Love, Snow, and Mistletoe. Is that what that? I always forget the title of it. But that has done super well for us. It got up to like 500, I think, in the whole Kindle store. So it did really, really well for us. And it's kind of it's coming down in rank, but it's still bringing in quite a few page reads because it is like a full-length book, even though there are 15,000 word novellas in it, because there's 4 of them in there. It's like a full-length book. And so it's bringing in pretty good money for us. The other way I've seen multi-author things done is through like a series where each author will write a book in either their world or on a certain subject or something that has to do similar between the books. And the authors will put them out just back to back and try and bank on people wanting to read through the whole series. Did I forget another way? Amy's shaking her head like, yeah. All right. I think those are the 2 ways I've seen it done most. So we're going to be talking about both of those tonight.
Would you consider like co-authors?
Yeah, somebody did have a question about co-authors as well. And I would say that's a little different than an anthology, but it is cooperating with another author to write a book. So with that, I would consider that as like 2 people writing just one book and then publishing it and splitting the royalties. That probably takes a little more coordination than some of these other ways that we're doing it. But let's go ahead and start with the questions. Our first question is from Bridget, and she said, how do you find people who are compatible and what are the benefits for a multi-author series? So we had a lot of people asking, how do you find people to do this with, or how do you find opportunities to be in an anthology or in a multi-author series? So what do you guys think?
So the first one I was ever in, I found a contest and they were taking submissions. It was Rugelwood Press, and it was a contest and you sent your story in, and I ended up being one of the 5 winners. And they've done one almost every year. They skipped last year, and then this year they're doing their last one. But it's been a series of fairy tales. Every series, every book was a different fairy tale, and mine was Sleeping Beauty. And so that one was interesting. It's been my only experience working with any kind of a traditional publisher. And it was really interesting because it was all handled by the publisher. And so there wasn't a need for any of the authors to do anything except sign the contract and write our story, which is different than a lot of these other things. But that is a possibility that people can do. There's a lot of different anthologies or collections that are put out by magazines and by small presses and big presses and all different things like that. So you can usually find those floating around different places. And then, different groups will put them together. A great way to find it is you can talk to your critique group. If your critique group is made up of people that you write similar types of stories and you work well together, then that's a great place to start, is to write, and sometimes people will just decide, hey, I want to put one together. and might even invite you to be part of one. So that's another way that I've been asked to be in. Actually, I think 3 different projects were ones where people asked me just because they were looking to fill up the numbers that they needed. So I don't know. Anybody else have any other way that you've stumbled into one? Oh, yes. Well, I guess that was a critique group. I guess Regency Party started with my critique group. Yeah, okay. I'm just mumbling. I'll stop.
I loved your Regency Party series that you guys put together. So I would love for you to talk in a second about how that all came about. Amy?
Well, and I think too, you could just start one yourself. So you could just, I mean, we all start to kind of migrate to people that we connect with. And then inside of that, you know, say, hey, let's write a series, let's write a spinoff, let's do something. I mean, to be the coordinator, it takes a lot of work. So make sure that you're willing to put forward the effort, or you say, let's get 6 people together and nominate a person to be the you know, liaison, the one who like cracks the whip and tells everybody it's time to do stuff. So, you know, you could either wait to be asked, or you could just go ahead and do it yourself.
I agree with that. I'm a big fan of if you don't see anybody coming to you, you go out and you go to other people and just say, I want to do this. Who wants to do this with me? And I probably would hand pick people to invite, just because you in your genre, you should know who the big players are, and you should be reading their books, and you should know whose books are very similar to your own. And if you're not reading other indie authors that write like you, then you should get out and do that, because you need to know who is writing what you're writing. It's very important to connect with them. All right, our next question. Oh, part 2 of Bridget's question we didn't really touch on is, what are the benefits for a multi-author series? So why would you want to be a part of that?
I think a lot of it is the opportunity to have a rapid release schedule with only having to write one of the books.
Exactly.
That's the benefit that got me interested in the one I'm going to be doing anyway.
Yes.
You also get to connect with other authors' platforms with their audience, and you also often have access to their review teams and can recruit new people to yours by introducing them to your work.
Yes, that's great.
This is also a blessing and a curse, but it forces you to stick to a schedule. So if you struggle with something like that, then one of these things would be good for you to do.
You're talking to me, aren't you?
No, I'm right there with you. I had to like bump my week because I was like, if you guys want me to participate in this, you're gonna have to like let me release a different week, because I can't do it all.
Yeah, deadlines can be killer. And I think another thing that I found with it's kind of a benefit, but it's also kind of a curse, is when it has certain guidelines for what the story should be about. Like if it should be a theme or set in a certain world, or it should be, you know, all these different things. It's both kind of a restriction in a lot of ways, but it also kind of helps me because it's fewer things that I have to figure out. So if there's like a world, like with Regency House Party, we had a specific house and specific characters and specific time, and we even had the weather and the activities and all the different things lined up every day. And so it was kind of like very, very specific in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I didn't have to come up with what the weather was going to be like or what, and it kind of even allowed me to, it was like a puzzle that I had to fit my story in to match all these different things. And it was actually a lot of fun, but some people might find that really restrictive too.
So tell us, Michelle, about your Regency Party anthology. How did that come about, and tell us more about what that was, what the setup was of that.
Okay, so I have a critique group of other historical romance authors. The 5 of us, you know, we're just working around on our personal projects, and then Jen Johnson came to all of us, and she had come across this really cool website or concept where it was set up to be a behind the scenes or bonus content for readers of a certain series. So they could go onto this website and interact with the characters and be in their world and all this sort of stuff. And we just thought it was a fun concept. And we thought, well, how can we turn this into something of ours? And we came up with the idea of setting all of our stories at the same house party. So a house party is in England in the, I don't know how long they've been going on, 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. I don't know. It just kept going. Where in these big mansions in England, the owners of the mansion would invite all kinds of people to come and just stay there. And it might be for 3 days, it might be for a week, but just all these people would come in and stay in these really close quarters for a week. And so just like all these opportunities for things to happen. And it just was the setting of our world. And so we all set our stories at that house party and had our characters intermingling with each other. So all of our characters are in all 5 of the stories. So it was a really interesting way to put it together. And it ended up being kind of this new animal that we didn't really know how to make it work in some ways. So when we originally told the stories, we were releasing chapter by chapter on our website and to build our platform. But then when it came time to publish, we didn't quite know how to create the same experience for our authors, because all of our first chapters went in order, then all of our second chapters went in order, then all of our third stories. So when we pulled them into individual stories, each of our stories made sense, but you lost the depth that you got the other way. And to do that, we'd have to publish it as one big book. So it's kind of, it kind of became a logistical difficulty. And so right now, the only way we have it published is in 5 individual novels and novellas, and you can see how they all interconnect if you read all 5 of them, but we would have to set up one of the things we're going to talk about, which is a way to publish under one name and distribute the royalties if we were to put it into one book, which we haven't done because it's kind of a big, hairy ordeal and not easy to do. So anyways, I don't know if that answered your questions.
That did. But I think it was perfect. Yes. And I love that setup. So Amy, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, that's okay. I was going to say, I have seen people who create a world. Like this would be more for like fantasy or sci-fi. And then I don't know if you would necessarily call it an anthology, but you invite people to write inside your world. So like if you're on 20 Books to 50K, Craig Martell has his own publishing house now where he finds people to write in his world and then takes a cut. So he publishes it for them. So it's in a way that would be a benefit for sort of like an anthology or a group, right? Like a group of authors. That could be another way that you get into writing with other people. So that way you're writing in an established world. You have an established fan base. And so you don't have to create all of those things yourself. And you just get to write. It's sort of kind of like ghostwriting, but you get to put your name on it. That sort of thing. So that would be another benefit, I think, of finding an anthology.
Sounds like a Kindle world, only he did it himself. So that's kind of cool. Awesome. So what are the points you need to keep in mind before the anthology is fixed up? Do you pre-decide the plots or general direction? And how do you decide on a theme? So I'm guessing there's a ton of different answers to that. I see Michelle shaking her head.
Well, hopefully you have somebody who's kind of in charge and making some decisions and deciding the direction for the group. I think that one of the things, if you're trying to put an anthology together or a multi-series collection, one of the things that Victorine and I stumbled across is that you might have 2 stories that are too similar. And that can be tricky. You might also have the problem of cohesion within the group. You need to have a solid theme, something that ties them together, that makes sense. So it's not just like, oh, look at all these authors threw all their books together to, try and make a run at a list or something. So it really helps to have a theme, something that really stands out and allows you to brand your book and market your book and find your readers. I know that I don't know if Amy wants to talk about the project that she's kind of spearheading, but so we had one that all of us were in, but Judy, right? The Destined for Love series that, tell me if I'm wrong, Lindsay Armstrong and Lucinda Whitney are the people that began that and ran that. They invited us to be part of that. And that theme for us was resort. So all of our stories had to happen at a resort. But beyond that, all the tropes and everything could be anything we wanted them to be. And so I think we all wrote them as part of an existing series that we had going on. But because it had that resorts theme and it was all tied together, and then it all worked, I think.
And I think for that series it worked, but I think when you get to that point, instead of like say have authors writing in the same world, people follow authors. They're not necessarily following the series. And I think my goal next year is to focus more on writing things where one follows after the other, or the series, they all interconnect, because I think that will help with my read through, because I think people will want to continue. So it kind of depends on what type of multi-author series you want to do, because it might be harder to have you guys all reach the same level, because the readership may not follow the series. You'll have a smaller group of people following that theme, but they'll really just be following the author that they like and whatever book that they put out in. So I think for us, go ahead, Judy. You want to say something?
I was going to say that, I agree with that. I think that definitely happened with like the Christmas one, young adult Christmas one that we just barely did, because the different books in the series are ranking very differently, because they're not necessarily part of the same series. They don't have recurring characters or themes. It's just Christmas and young adult, and
right. And I'm learning that to keep, I have decent read through from one book to the next, but I think to get that really good read through is connecting your books somehow, so that the reader is dying to get the next book. It's the reason why when I start reading a series, after I finish reading a book, I'm buying the next book, because I need to find out. So as much as people hate cliffhangers, I mean, that's really what gets people to buy stuff. So if you leave something open-ended, they want to figure out the story of that. So that's going to be my goal.
So I have to say, with the Regency House Party series, that we had great read-through. I mean, really excellent read-through from the first book to the fifth. So when my book ended up launching first, because of the order that the story went in. And so when my book launched, the fifth book was getting tons of pre-orders. I mean, there were pre-orders all the way down to the fifth. And so the fifth book, which was Jen Johnson's, ended up having a crazy amount of pre-orders by the time the 4 books in front of her had launched. So we knew we were getting the read through all the way through. And even now, several months out, our ranks are staying really close to each other. And we compare sales numbers every now and then, and our sales numbers are really close. So we know that because the characters are, throughout the whole series, and they are familiar with these people, and they want to see, well, what happens to this character? What happens to this character? People read across the whole series, and it has been really great to see that.
And I think too, when you have an group author, even when you're in an anthology, you have to realize that reviewers are going to follow authors as well. So what they might love your book, but not like someone else's book. And it's hard not to compare yourself to other people and their writing, especially if they have a bigger review team. And then their review team is going to say, but I love this book. This book was the greatest. And it's going to make you feel like, oh, well, okay, I guess you didn't really like my book. But it just could be the fact that you're not the author for them. So I think that's also a really hard thing to do when you're in a reader or a multi-author series or an anthology.
And it's absolutely my least favorite part of doing anything like this. And it's not just when they say Michelle's was my least favorite of the collection. I mean, that is never fun. But I also don't like it when they say that mine was their favorite and that they didn't like someone else's, because that's the one I care about. That's the one I work closely with, somebody whose story I like. And I don't like to have them feel bad either. You know, like, I feel like there's this sort of a urge they have to compare the books. Like, they can't just say this is the good point and the bad point of this book, or, you know, that they have to compare them for some reason and rank them. And I hate that personally. Like, it just drives me crazy. I'm like, just say if you like this story or not. You don't have to say, like, my least favorite, my second best favorite, my, you know, the one that I could have done without, you know, like, anybody else feel that way, or is it just me?
Yeah, no, it's me too.
Yeah, I just don't like that.
Yeah, it doesn't ever feel good to be compared with your peers and people like you said, that you work closely with and that you admire, and you don't want anybody to feel bad. And so, yeah, I agree with you.
I think you get that more on actually anthologies, though. I don't think you get it as much on individual books. I think people focus more on, I liked the book than I didn't like this book, but I like the other books in it. I think you get more of that.
It depends on how closely the books in the multi-author series are linked. So, like the Destined for Love resorts, I think there was very little of that.
Right.
But with our Regency house party, where we're so close, we do get that.
So I think I can talk about our project coming up. Because it's gonna launch in February. So we are writing a new YA series with a bunch of other authors. And I have been helping spearhead that. I was actually reached out to by a couple of authors asking if we could write in a YA, because they saw how much I love YA and how well my YA books are doing. And they said, hey, we want to write YA. So I was like, sure. So I think one of the biggest things, especially if you're going to write in a common world. So we're writing in a common world. It's all based in the same high school, and it's going to take place over a school year. So I think that will help really well with our read through. You have to set up the word count. What are you going to expect from your authors? You know, you have to give at least a minimum and probably a maximum, but you know, you could make the maximum a little more loosey goosey, but you don't want there to be too stark of a difference where one's 20K and the next one's 75K, because I think that would kind of jar the readers. Then you have to decide what point of view, because you kind of want to keep it the same all the way through. Especially if it's interconnected like ours is going to be. And then this was probably our biggest thing that we learned most about is you need to have somebody who's going to own the world. Like, I'm going to be the one who creates the principal. I'm going to be the one that creates the stores. I'm going to be the one that does this, this, and this. And therefore, if this happens, you know, was to be optioned for a movie. I think in the future, if I was to do another one, I would say, here, I'm going to create this world. Will you come right in it? But since it was kind of a collaboration of a bunch of people's minds, nobody wanted to have one person have those sole rights. So we had to come up with lots of contractual, there we go, things like, well, what if one book gets asked to be a movie? What do we do about everybody else? Because once you sell the rights, nobody can write in that world. So that's a big thing to do. Or what happens if, you know, can people do spin-off books? Can you write, you know, in the suite, you know, in the town that you're in the same high school, but in a different series, you know, and you have to have, okay, these characters you can't touch. These are only my characters, and I don't want you using them at all. Then there's also going to be, here's my character and that they did. Now you're going to put that in your book, and that's okay. But now you've taken my, you know, tomboy and made her a valley girl, you know, so there's a lot of that too. So there's a lot of, like Michelle, they work very closely with one another. On this day, the weather's this, and on that day, it's not. We're not going to be that picky because we're like, okay, you have this section of the school period, do what you want with it. But like me and the person launching right after me, we're both doing homecoming. So we had to come up with a homecoming theme, and we had to come up with a party, and any major events that are going to happen during that time, you need to talk about. So I think going into an anthology, you know, having these guidelines set up is really, really important. And, you know, having these decisions made in your contract that you make. And I recommend having a contract, because you could say, oh no, we're all good friends, we love each other, you know, and it just takes one thing to happen, and then all of a sudden you're battling over who gets what and why, you know. So just draw up a contract, say what's going to happen in it, and then stick to it. And that goes for release dates too, you know, because if you're planning and you are working really hard and you get yours ready and somebody else doesn't, and now I'm proof of this, but we didn't sign a contract, so I'm okay with that. But, you know, have all of those things in place so that if a movie deal does come knocking, you know what's going to happen. You know, is it a percentage? Do you just say, pat on the back, good job, you got the movie, and we all move on with our lives? You know, you kind of have to come up with these plans and ideas right away when you're going to write in a series in the same world.
Yep.
Yeah, so I would add a couple of things. Like, you need to be in alignment on what your cover is going to look like. If you're going to use the same cover designer, you need, talk about titles. If you're going to let people do whatever title they want, or if the titles need to, be cohesive, what kind of branding are you going to use across your series so that people recognize it from book to book? Who owns the brand of your multi-author series? Especially anthologies often break apart after a certain time, but a lot of times multi-author series, like our Regency House Party, we're not breaking it up. It's staying what it is for forever. Like Amy mentioned, your due dates, your publishing schedule, what kind of editing are you going to require each of the authors to get for their book? How are you going to market it? Are you all going to pay for promotions? Are you going to organize your newsletter swaps? What are you going to do for each other on launch day? And a lot of times when you're sharing characters, like in our Regency House Party, we actually wrote into the contract, which characters we were all able to own and use in future stories, which ones are only ours, which characters of ours we're giving the other authors in the series permission to use in their stories, so that we never had anybody come back and say, hey, that's my character that I own and you're not allowed to use them. So there's so much to think about with contracts, and I definitely recommend, having somebody in charge, making the decisions, and getting a good, possibly like entertainment lawyer, somebody who understands copyrights and contracts to really help you figure them out, because contracts are not created equal.
Yes, I agree. And this is kind of skipping ahead, but someone did ask, what are some red flags in a contract for an anthology? What should you stay away from? Has anybody had any experience with that?
Be careful how long your book is going to belong to the anthology or collection. Like, when do the rights revert back to you to do something with? And you want it back as quickly as possible, I think. For sure.
I think any contract that says if you don't release it, then you pay the group money, I would probably stay away from there as well. I've never seen that, but I think of like what happened with Victorine, where they're like, you sign this contract, and if you don't deliver, then you're going to have to pay us money. And I think I would run very, very far away from something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Stay away from that. I would just say, if you don't know who you're working with, then just be sure everything is set out very clear and that you're very comfortable with everything that's put in the contract. And don't leave anything ambiguous. Don't say, well, these are good people, so we don't have to put in the contract when it's going to be released back to me. They'll give it back to me when, you want the meeting of the minds in the contract. Otherwise, some people may be thinking, well, a reasonable amount of time is 5 years, and you might be thinking, well, a reasonable amount of time is 3 months. So you want to make sure everything is clear.
I think there can also be concern over who, like I mentioned, who owns the brand, because that needs to be something that is definitely lined up in the contract, because somebody might get invited to participate in it and then feel like they own a part of it. And that's not how it works. The person who conceives the concept and invites people to join them, the person who originated the idea should own the brand, or the original people who did it. Now, it depends on how much input everybody has in to the beginning. If somebody says, hey, like with our Regency House Party, Jen had the original idea, but it was very very loosely conceived because she didn't really know what she wanted to do. She just kind of had a general idea. And so as we shaped it together, the 5 of us worked across it very broadly, very much together as a group. So we agreed together that it was our brand and that the 5 of us owned it together. But it can, be completely different thing in other situations. So I think that's something you have to be careful with, because someone might go off on their own and write another book and brand it the same way. And then what do? Then you have copyright and frictions that you have to deal with. So be very clear about that.
Good. All right. Our next question is, do multi-author series make more money?
I think it depends on how it's set up. Really.
I think that's exactly right. It's kind of like answering the question, how much money do you make when you publish a book? It can be $1 or it could be thousands and thousands of dollars. So yeah, I think you're right. It just depends on what genre you're in, how it's set up. If it's, like with the Regency house party, they were all super interconnected and everybody, the read through, the sell through was super, super good. And she was asking after that, what if there's an unknown person in with, some authors that are more well known? Well, I think it just depends on how everything's set up to get that read through. Like with the one, go ahead.
I was talking to somebody who did a very long multi-author series, and she said that it didn't make her as much as she thought it was going to, and in the future she wasn't going to continue writing in it because the books would get really high in rank, but then they would drop very fast. And she thought it was because there was just a group of people who were following the entire series. So, I mean, if you think about it, yes, you're putting a book out every couple weeks, but that book's not yours. Your book doesn't come out for a month or 2 or 3. So if I would give any advice, if you want to make money, I would not bank on a multi-author series or anthology. I would write it and then I would move on and continue writing, because the more you release for your own, the better it's for you. Not so much. I would not just give up writing in my own series to write in a multi-author series. I think that would just be part of the stuff I was writing. So it just kind of depends on what you want to focus on.
For me, I would definitely say do not go into this with the intent of making more money. I would go into it as a marketing tactic, because I think that the advantages weigh more heavily in favor of you being able to gather a bigger audience, to be able to tap into somebody else's audience, and to be able to get more visibility if somebody's able to help to pull your ranks up based on the strength of the overall platform of the series. So, I mean, you have the opportunity to get more readers and more visibility, and you can pretty much gauge that to a degree, but how much you're going to make is just, you're lucky if you do make some good money with it. It's kind of like a bonus to me. I think I'm going to, it's never going to be part of my money making planning going forward. I intend to be in fewer collections and anthologies and multi-author series. I'm going to do a very, very select few and focus all of my attention on building my own series that I own, that I can, continue to promote and make money for me going forward. So that is what I decided over doing a big handful of these.
Right. Because go ahead, Judy.
Oh, I was going to say, and I think another thing to consider is just the deadlines, because I found myself, like, I have this certain deadline for the book that I have to do, and it's like a few months away, but I know I can't write a book before that one, but then I'm like, that other one's going to be sitting for a little bit, and so it's made me it's like, oh, why write today? I have a little bit, I have time. So you got to think about the deadlines too, if you want to keep up with those and how they affect your whole schedule.
Yep.
Right. And I think too, if you think about it, if you're not writing a book, like the nice thing about the Destin one was that we could write in a current series that we have, so you could continue growing that specific series or brand. But if you write like this, my countdown for Christmas, I wrote for the YA, and it just doesn't really fit in any of my series. And so I'm going to have this book that's just kind of floating out there, that's not really anchored to anything else. Like I came up with a small spin-off series to write for it, but now it's like, I like things that can be bundled together or can go together, and now I have this one that's just kind of stuck out there that's not really going to do anything. And that's actually my second chance Mistletoe Kisses, same thing with that. And I mean, I have 2 Christmas books now, and they have really no other series to go with it. I mean, the countdown for Christmas, we had an agreement that we would keep it with the cover that we have for 3 months, and then you could change it back and it could be part of your series. But I wasn't like Judy, and Judy just wrote it inside of her series so she can change the cover and it will be just super cohesive. I just was kind of like, well, I already have a Christmas series in my book, in my YA book. I mean, I guess I could always come up with a rule and rebrand it. I might do that, but I kind of like it. I might leave it. I don't know. I think next year for Christmas, I'll just bundle all my Christmas stories together into one series and then sell that. But that's another thing to think about. You're just going to have this book. So, or you write it and think, hey, I'll just give it as a reader magnet once I finally get the rights back. And I think that was one of the questions. And that can be really good, especially if it's like a 10,000 word story, or if it's just a small novella that you wrote, getting the rights back and then putting it up. We are learning that a reader magnet is incredibly valuable. And so the more you have, the more you can give to your readers, the better off you'll be for that. So
definitely. Totally agree with that. All right. Their next question is, what's the best price to put your anthology at, or your individual books at? And that's another really hard question, because I guess it really depends on what you want to do. What do you guys think?
It depends on your genre and the size of your anthology or book. So I would just base it off of whatever your genre is doing for that size of a book.
Yeah, I would do research and look at what other people are doing, and the ones that are successful, follow after them.
Mm-hmm. And I think that is a huge one that you guys need to have in your contract about what you launch your price at, what you don't. I mean, Michelle can talk about, she kind of felt a little sad because she had to price her book at 99 cents while everyone else got to price theirs at $2.99. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Michelle, or not. But
well, it wasn't that. It was that everybody was able to get pre-orders at full price a lot longer than I was, and so like my book didn't get the pre-orders at full price as well as the other ones did. But at the same time, mine had other advantages by being first in the series. So it kind of all balances it out. And when we originally talked, we had talked about leaving our book at 99 cents longer, which would have meant that my book would have been 99 cents for like weeks and weeks and weeks. And so I just went to him and I said, I think it makes sense actually to do a launch week price and then raise it up, so that, because we were launching a new story every week. I didn't want to steal someone else's special pricing by having the same price as they did either. It would have killed their launch. And so we, at that point, re-examined what our strategy was and realized that we needed to raise our price back up after our launch week. And so that's what we ended up doing. And it ended up working out well for pretty much all of us. I think that's a thing that's really tricky about your publishing schedule, like who goes first, who goes last, who goes in the middle, if you're doing it that way, because there's going to be pros and cons to every position on the schedule. And sometimes you're just never really going to know which is a better place. And so like we're already working on the next series in our series. How do you say that? The next volume in our series, the next round of our series. And Jen actually drew our names out of a hat to see who was going to go in which order this time, so that it was, kind of fair for everybody. It's a tricky thing, but yeah, that's what I was going to say is that we ended up doing 99 cents for our launch week to bring our ranks up and to get us higher. And then when we switched to full price at $2.99, even though it was a novella, we were still getting plenty of sales, and it did really well for us. So,
Awesome. That's good. How long do books usually stay in an anthology? And I have seen, nobody's like, what, me?
Well, I think if you're in KU, it's a minimum of 3 months. And then after that, it's kind of decided what you want to do with it. Most of the time, you're in it for the KU period of time. And then after that, it could be, I know for our YA one we want to make sure that the last person gets as much benefit as the first person did. So we have it extended like a year from when the last book is released, just so that person gets that full year of being a complete series before we'll break it up.
Yeah.
Now, don't the big box sets are put together just to make a run and a list? Aren't they usually like only together for a month or something?
Yeah, it can be really short like that.
Because they're wide, they're not in KU.
Yeah, they're not held to that.
Yeah, some of them have only been like a week that I've seen before also. So just get the week and then do what you want after.
Yep. I think it really depends on your goals and who's writing the contract. And if you sign a contract without looking at how long it's going to be in the anthology, you could be stuck there for years. I know some anthologies that have been put out that are still selling from years ago. So
yeah,
just depends.
So with Regency House Party, our books make more sense together. And so we're keeping them together. With my fantasy anthology through Rootwood Press, in the original contract, it said that you could talk to them about negotiating your rights reversal. And turns out there wasn't any negotiation. And when I finally contacted them, I think it ended up being 5 years. I get it back in 5 years. And it's only like a certain point into the edits, like, so that I'm not taking any of their work. I only get the actual work that I did on it, which gets really fuzzy. So it gets really tricky, but at the same time, that one is important to them to keep that because of what it is. And it just depends on does the story make just as much sense on its own. Then you probably want it back sooner. You want rights to your stories as soon as you can get them. But if it makes more sense where it is, then maybe you keep it together. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So what's the best way to distribute the royalties for paid anthologies?
You let someone else do it.
Yeah, so the one Michelle and I were in, we kind of were like, you do it. No, you do it. No, you do it. Because none of us are really great with taxes and stuff like that. But my husband actually volunteered to do all that for us because he is much better at taxes than I am. And he knows all that information that you need to know because if you pay out more than like $600, you need to send, I don't know, tax information. You need to gather information from them for tax purposes and stuff like that.
You have to send 1099s out.
Yeah, that thing. So,
well, actually, my tax lawyer told me that we need to send 1099s to anybody that we pay for our author business over $700. So I'm going to be sending a lot of 1099s this year to my PA and to my editor and to Victorine and a lot of people are going to get 1099. I hate taxes. I hate taxes.
And it's luckily my fantasy designer lives in Slovenia, so I don't have to send her one. But it is one of those interesting things when you're talking about the royalty stuff. That's one of the reasons that our Regency House Party never did that, because it's tricky. But I've seen several authors coming together that plan to write series together, actually forming a small press on their own. So
you just have to be careful with something like that, because then that would be considered a partnership, unless some person, because that's where taxes get iffy. So if you're going to do like this multi-author series and you're going to say, no, we're going to be a partnership in it and we're going to split all the money, then you have to file partnership and you have to do all this stuff. And then it gets more complicated. So you're going to have to decide, is it really important to you to own part of this world, or is it better just to say, here, you take it and we'll go from there? Because once you go away from a sole proprietorship, which is what most of us are, you go into partnerships, it gets a lot more.
Yeah, and I'm sure that just goes back to what your intentions are. And if you intend to do them often and to have it ongoing through the, into the future where you do them with the same group of people or under the same name and the same brand, then it makes sense to go to the trouble to work out all those legalities. But if it's a one-off thing and one series, and then, I wouldn't say it was worth it.
I agree. So our next question is, what is the goal of doing an anthology or a multi-author set? And I think that's different for every, person. So some people may have the goal of getting on a list, and what you do is different if you have that goal than if your goal is to make money or to advertise your other books or things like that. What do you guys think?
I agree.
Thank you.
I think you need to come back to what we said earlier, where if your goal is to make money, then don't make anthologies your only way of making money. So I think you will be more surprised, or you'll be less thrilled with the results of doing a multi-author series or anthology than you would be just creating your own series, creating your own world and writing in that. I think everybody has different voices. Everybody has different styles of writing. So you just kind of need to make sure that you aren't putting all your eggs in the anthology or multi-series basket, because it's not going to make you as much, I think, as you think it will.
It's all about finding readers for me.
Mm-hmm. That's true. All right. So do you guys prefer releasing wide or in KU if you're doing an anthology?
I've only done KU. The only time I hear people going wide is if they're already currently in wide or they're going for USA Today.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. I think KU gives you more money. Just what I've found. So how do you, if you're going to try to get the USA Today bestseller list, how do you do that with a multi-author set? Has anybody tried for that?
So I haven't done one yet, but I am part of a Facebook group of people who are thinking about doing one. And so what we've set up for that is we voted on a world that we would do, and we would each have our book that fits in that world, and then we'd have it set in there, and we each would put like $500 into it, and this other guy was going to be running it for us because we're all busy. So you do things like that, and then have it so that it is for sale wide for that week, and then you can do whatever you want with it after that. But then you also are supposed to do certain things where you advertise it to your newsletter at certain points, and maybe set up different ads for it to try and hit the list, because you have to get on, you have to have so many books on each of the retailers, I think, to be able to do that. So those are some of the things they did.
Yeah, you have to get so many sales at each of the retailers, and so it's kind of like a blitzkrieg. It's kind of like all hands on deck. We're dropping all this money. Every promotion we can get our hands on, everybody is going to just, put the full steam effort into getting sales right here, right now, in this little tiny window. And then that's all it's about.
Yeah, and with that, you don't go into it hoping to make money. You go into it just hoping to get your letters. So you put forth the money and, and hope you do well.
Yep. Exactly. All right. How do you decide which authors are compatible with you before you embark on a co-author journey? And what should you look for in a co-author? And what are the best practices? Now, this is something I've never done, is co-authoring with somebody else. I don't know. Have any of you worked with another author to co-write?
No, but I would think you would need to like really know the author really well and really study their reading or their writing to make sure it's something that you like and you think would work well with your writing, and just and also probably watch how like their productivity, just to make sure you can trust them that they will do what you need to, and just yeah, so you just have to know them really well.
Yeah, I agree.
Make sure that they're not people who get involved in a lot of drama. I mean, it seems like a silly thing, but I mean, if you can find someone who's flexible, who's willing to make changes, who's willing to be criticized, who's willing to, just take one for the team kind of spirit, those are the kind of people that you can have good working relationships with. But if it's somebody who's always mad, somebody who's always getting offended, somebody who, blames everybody when something goes wrong, those people are not going to be any fun to work with. So it might be a lot of fun. They might be great to work with in other areas, but I wouldn't want to have any kind of collaboration with people like that.
I agree. The thing that I've seen work the best for people in co-authoring is when they decide on a storyline and one person writes one point of view and then the other person writes the other person's point of view, and they just switch back and forth between the two of them. So I've seen that a couple of times.
Yeah, I've heard of these two authors that were doing it. They were planning to just have it up in like Google Docs, and one person would write the chapter one week, and then the next person would, read that to kind of catch up on what was happening, and then they'd write their chapter, and they would just kind of, I guess, discovery, right? Maybe they had an outline beforehand also, but that's one way that I've heard.
Yeah, me too. Perfect. All right, what are the warning signs of a treacherous multi-author series situation?
Lots of drama up front.
That's what I would say. If you have lots of drama before the contract's even signed, just run.
I think something that could help you from not entering into that is to say, let's do, X. And then if you hit that, then you continue, instead of getting yourself so, entrenched in all of this just to find out it's not going to work together. But so if you're questioning these people, or if you think they're going to be good or not, start setting deadlines. Everybody have your cover done by X time and have it submitted. And if you don't, then you're booted out. And also you have to have a reason. You have to have a consequence for those who don't, because you're going to have a lot of the authors that are meeting their deadlines and are getting it ready. And what's the consequence going to be for those people who aren't? And maybe they just forfeit their spot and they can't, and you just can't be a part of it. You're done. And you have to, and that's where you set those boundaries to begin with and say, I'm barring, your death in the family or dismemberment, you have to have this done. And if you don't, then you're out. We're not moving you. You just forfeit being part of this, team, because there's a lot of moving parts in a multi-author. So before you even accept to do it, you need to make sure you can, and then you need to make sure you understand what the consequences are if you can't hit the guidelines or the deadlines that you need to hit. So if you're worried about people not being able to hit the deadlines, have smaller deadlines for them to hit earlier on so that you can know, okay, this is not going to work. We need to not do this. And I think with this, I was part of the USA Today one that Judy was talking about. And one of the issues we had was that it was romance, but there was two different types of spectrum for romance. There was sweet on one side and there was spicy on the other. And I don't think mixing those two was going to be really beneficial, because those are going to be different audiences. And it was hard for me to be like, yeah, sure, I'll be part of this because I'm putting my name on this. I'm sending it to my newsletter. And if every book, and I don't want to be like, okay, read this book, and this book, but this book has dirt, stuff that you don't want to read, or it's spicy, or it's, not what I normally write. And I didn't want to call anybody out or point fingers at anybody. So I was like, maybe we need to decide on a heat level for this book. If it's PG-13 or less, or it's closed doors, is there swearing? Is there not swearing? There's a lot of things that you need to decide up front. And it was kind of good that we brought that up right away before we all started paying in $500, and then going, oh, wait a minute, what about the heat level? And then saying, okay, well, and we had some authors, like, I was willing to discuss heat level. Obviously, there's a certain level I wasn't going to go over. But other people were like, no, that's not part of my brand. And then they shut the door and walked away. And we were like, oh, okay, apparently we kind of poked the beast with that one. But it was good for us to establish it right away, because then we knew, okay, those authors will not write more on the sweeter side. They only want to stay spicy. So that would not be a good mixture of people. So, I think when you have a contract and you draw these lines in the sand, people who don't want to or think they can't will automatically back down. And so the only time where you would start getting into a treacherous situation, if you're always like, kumbaya, everything's great, we're friends, nothing's ever going to come between us, and then you progress, and then you have one person who's working harder than the other person, and they get angry, and that's where you're going to get into that treacherous waters. So it may feel like a contract is super binding, but it's really not. It's actually very beneficial.
Well, I'd say it's really helpful to have a point person or two people who make all the decisions and figure everything out, and then invite other people to join them and give them the contract. Are you willing to do this? And they can say, yeah, that works for me, or no, it doesn't, rather than have 15 different people trying to agree on terms and come up with a contract. Because then, you can't ever get a consensus with that many people on when it should be, and people end up getting their feelings hurt. They'll end up, like feeling like it's unfair to them, or somebody else is getting favoritism. And so, yeah, I think it's really good to have all of that established before other authors are brought into it. With our Regency house party, we were just 5 friends, and we were going along and let's do this thing. And then right before we're publishing, we're like, yeah, we should do a contract. We're like, yeah, we should. And we were so lucky that even though we had a few things that we kind of had to work out between us, nothing got serious. And now we have a contract that is protecting us, but, that could have blown up in our faces so easily. And that would have been awful.
Yeah, you're right. Very, very important. All right. The next question is it more beneficial to have one author over another be the one to submit the book on Amazon? What do you guys think? Is there any benefit, or?
Well, you're the one who did that for you guys, so I think you're the only one with experience.
And they chose me because my husband can do all the tech stuff. I just think, make sure it's somebody you trust, and make sure it's somebody who can do everything behind the scenes that you need in order to pay everybody and all that, keep everything straight and all that.
Yeah, so that for the anthology. But then if it's like a multi-author series and your book is separate, then I would prefer to submit it myself so that the money's coming to me instead of someone else taking like a royalty and then giving me what's left. So
I agree.
And I think also we didn't discuss this, but price pointing your books, like if you're going to do have in your contract talking about what if somebody wants to do a promo, because you have to realize that you do a promotion on your book and it's going to benefit everybody else. You're going to pay to benefit everybody else. And you have to understand that, have that in the contract. Is it something that every month, one other person has to put their book on discount and they have to promote it? That sort of thing, because, it could be frustrating to be like, well, I'm the first in the series and I'm doing all this money and I'm putting all this promotion in and everybody else is benefiting from it because of all the read through. And, I don't want to be the only person that's always doing this. Or you just need to say, I care about me and my book, and I'm going to do what's going to be beneficial for my book. And if it helps other people, it helps other people. But you don't get that read through and that instant money back where if I got a book bub, I got and it's free. And now everybody else is going to benefit because I got a book bub. I'm going to have less benefit from any promo I do. So then you're going to have to figure out, is it worth it to have a promo? So that's another thing you need to put in the contract. Price points and promotions. Are people going to be able to promote it? Can they drop it? What can they do to help revitalize their book?
Beautiful. All right. What about order? If you have some well-known authors and with some lesser-known authors, is there any benefit to what order they go in?
Yes, there is but it's hard to tell what that's always going to be. It's kind of like anything. Like there are so many factors that affect it. You know, it could be like how big of a platform does the first author have? It could be, you know, what time of the year that person ends up publishing. It could be, you know, just all kinds of different things can affect it. But I would say generally you probably want to lead off with your best known author because they're going to, you know, stimulate everything, get it moving and get you the visibility. And then I almost feel like you should sandwich the lesser known ones in the middle and have your bigger names as bookends so that people are trying to read through to get to the well recognized names. So that's just kind of how I feel. But I've seen some of the bigger series, multi-author series that it seems like I'm always seeing new names pop in. So I see the old familiars, and then I see some new name pop in on the series, and you're like, oh, wonder who that is, you know? And then you try that book out. And so, you know, who knows? I'm just, you know, yeah, who knows? It'd be awesome if we could just give like black and white answers. Here it is.
Right. It's awesome.
I know for our YA series we're doing, since I was reached out to and the YA author that had this at the time, the books that were selling the best, I offered to go first. But I think, you know, going first or going last has its pros and cons. I think once you're in the middle, it's a lot better. But you know, if you're going to start an anthology or not anthology, you're going to start a group series, then you can decide. That's one of the benefits of starting, you know, being the run. You say, I go first, I go last, I'm right in the middle, you know? And then after that, like for us, we just said, okay, here's the time of year, pick which time of year you want to write in. And so everybody, you know, it was a first come, first serve basis. So if you really wanted a certain time, you had to be there to sign up for it right away and then go from there. So I think, you know, that kind of helps motivate people. If you're not there fast enough, then you don't get it. But after that, I think it's also just kind of like, when can you release? If you can release this date, then you get that date. So,
well, one thing we didn't think about with Regency House Party is that if you're the fifth book, you're on the second page of these series on the book product pages. And so poor Jen's book is always on page 2 by itself. And she doesn't get as much visibility with people just scrolling down the page and seeing the other books in the series. So that is something else to consider.
Yeah, that's good.
It's tricky.
All right. Do we have any questions on our live feed?
No, we just have a lot of people excited to be here and excited that they actually got to watch us live. So we're happy you're here. Fantastic. Sorry that some of us are falling asleep. I'm so tired.
We stay up late, but sometimes we don't do it well.
No. I seriously need a vacation. I think I'm like getting older by this like minute. I'm like, ugh.
Awesome. Well, we are running out of time, but next week we don't know what we're doing next week. It's going to be a surprise. I'm going to be leaving for my cruise next week, so I will not be here, but everybody else will be here and doing something awesome, I'm sure.
Always. Partying without Victorine.
Maybe a guest.
It's going to be deconstructing Victorine's work.
That's right.
Talking about her behind her back.
That's right.
So I've actually gotten a response. We're hoping to get Jen Johnson on here.
Yay! I love Jen Johnson.
Yeah, we got to work out the time with her.
Work out the time with her. It's 10
I know,
to 11.
Okay. She's a go. She's a go. Yay. So next week it's going to be historical romance with Jen Johnson.
Oh, you guys will love her. Jen is
awesome. Me and Judy will sit there and listen.
I'd like to read it. Yeah.
Yes, and you won't miss me at all because I don't know anything about historical. So
we'll be like, read, don't talk.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us tonight, and we will see you next week. And don't forget to subscribe if you would like our show. We want you to get the notifications when we come on live so you can watch our show. And we will see you next week.
Bye.